If you're like me and you were born in the 70s or 80s, you'll no doubt be familiar with the Super Nintendo, which is also called the Super Famicom in Japan, and commonly abbreviated to SNES, or as I grew up calling it, the SNES. Originally released in the early 90s, Nintendo later came out with a miniature version of this staple household console in September 2017, giving gamers young and old a chance to relive an era of gaming that helped define Nintendo as one of the big players, if not the biggest player, in video games at the time. How does the SNES Classic Mini hold up in 2022? Let's find out. This is Clembo from ZenTechLife, where we love all things to do with lifestyle tech and gadgets. As always, if you're in a rush, there are timestamps and chapter markers below, so if you want to skip ahead, feel free to do so. I'm also hosting a giveaway, so stay tuned for more details about that later on in this video. So, get comfy and let's game on. The Super Nintendo was Nintendo's foray into the 16-bit era of gaming in 1990, introducing vivid colours, more detailed graphics, richer audio, and much more complexity in game depth and player experience. It was a marked improvement over their original NES, which was built on 8-bit architecture, and despite being 2 years late to this era, as Sega had already released their 16-bit Genesis, also known as Mega Drive, in 1988, Nintendo's reputation as a market leader owing to the success of the original NES propelled sales and sparked one of history's fiercest console wars. As a child, I distinctly remember half my friends had the Sega Mega Drive and the others had a SNES. So which team was I on? Team Nintendo all the way. In my opinion, the SNES had the better games, and as a fairly innocent 8-year-old boy, the edgy and cool marketing strategy that Sega pushed with the Mega Drive didn't really appeal to me. In contrast, the multicolored controller and vivid color palette of Nintendo's flagship games like Super Mario World, The Legend of Zelda, and Super Mario Kart all grabbed my attention. These games didn't just look pretty either, they all pushed the boundaries of their respective genres, and Nintendo hit home run after home run with their exclusives. That's not to say Sega was bad, and far from it in fact. They had their own successes with Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, Afterburner, and an uncensored version of Mortal Kombat, cementing its position as a more mature-oriented console compared to its rival. I wanted to give Sega credit where it's due, because without Sega, perhaps Nintendo would not have become the gaming powerhouse that it is today. Ultimately, competition will always encourage innovation. The original SNES is very much a retro piece of tech, and it's quite difficult to get hold of a working model in decent condition today. Not to mention the archaic RCA output cable, which you struggle to connect to any modern TV without the help of an adapter of some kind. For the longest time, gamers who wanted to relive their past had to use emulation software to run ROMs of their favourite games. A particularly grey area when it comes to the legality of doing this. Nintendo did eventually release the Virtual Console on the Nintendo Wii and 3DS, giving gamers a legal channel to purchase and replay classic Nintendo games. But without the authentic classic controller to go with them, it didn't quite feel like a true homage to the retro gaming experience. But then in 2017, Nintendo finally announced the SNES Classic Mini to much fanfare, which came off hot off the tails of the NES Classic Mini, which was also a roaring success. The miniature size, upgrade to USB power and HDMI output, along with specially designed classic controllers providing that authentic experience, made the SNES Classic Mini an immediate hit. So 5 years on, and with this SNES Classic Mini well and truly out of production, it's harder than ever to get your hands on one for the original $80 that it was released at. As an avid gamer, when these released back in 2017, I was compelled to own not just one, but all 3 regions of the SNES Classic Mini. Now don't ask me why, it just happened. Fortunately for me, I was able to source all 3 versions, the US, the EU and the Japanese variants, with relative ease here in Hong Kong. But now I've realised that A, I don't need 3 of the same gadget, and B, I just don't have space for unnecessary products like this. So that leads me to my giveaway. One lucky winner will be given one of these SNES Classic Minis, and you'll be able to choose whichever model you prefer, the US, EU or Japanese region. But before I tell you how to participate, why not hear some of my thoughts about this classic console in 2022, and whether it's something worth collecting. The hardware is as you might expect. the mini console itself, which is very faithful to the original device from the 1990s and also adorably cute in size. Nintendo even made regional differences between the US, EU and Japanese models. For example, the US version has the more rectangular shell with purple accented buttons on both the console and controllers, whereas the EU and Japanese versions have multicolored buttons on the controllers and, in my opinion, the sleeker curved body. Even between the EU and Japanese models, there are subtle differences such as Super Famicom printed on the front of the Japanese console, which differs from the EU branding of the same machine. From a feature standpoint, the hardware is exactly the same for all versions, with no individual region offering more or less than the others. The controllers are also true to their original size, and the buttons feel exactly how I remember them to be back when I was younger. It's incredibly easy to set up and operate. Simply connect the included HDMI cable, plug the micro USB cable into a 5V power source, open up the controller flap at the front to reveal the ports where you can plug in up to 2 of the included controllers, then flip the power switch on and you're good to go. What you'll be presented with is Nintendo's official emulation software wrapped in a clean and easy to use retro interface. I think Nintendo did a great job with this menu system, showing off the classic box art of the original games and designing the interface elements with a matching 16-bit pixelated style. Navigating left and right will scroll through the 21 pre-installed games. You'll also see a specially locked Star Fox 2 game, which was never previously released and is a big selling point for owning a SNES Classic Mini. You can push up to arrive at a menu bar with various sub-menus. The display menu lets you alter how you want the games to be displayed when you play them, giving you choices to simulate old school CRT televisions with scan lines, a simple 4:3 aspect ratio without the CRT simulation, and something called Pixel Perfect, which simulates hardware that Nintendo used internally when developing games. And then beneath that is a choice of frames or skins that you can choose to fill up the blank space of your widescreen television when you're playing any of the classic games. The second menu option leads you to a settings area where you can toggle on and off various items such as gameplay demos that automatically appear like a screensaver, as well as a screen burn-in reduction setting and the option to factory reset the console if you wish to. The last 3 menu items lead you to language settings, boring legal notices, and a QR code if you ever feel like perusing the online manual for the Classic Mini. Pressing down from the game list brings you to a suspend point list, which provides an alternative saving system for every game. This is a very welcome feature because back when these games were originally released, the SNES didn't have onboard storage, and the ability to save a game had to be hard-coded to the game cartridge itself. RPGs, for example, had save points throughout the game that could be stored on the game cartridge. But many games didn't have any kind of saving system, meaning you either left the game on pause when you had to go do something else, or you simply started the game again from the beginning if you ever turned the machine off. Additionally, each suspend point can be rewinded, so say for example you accidentally jumped off a platform or selected the wrong dialogue option, you can create a suspend point, scrub through the gameplay to a moment just before the accident happened, then continue playing from that point onwards. I'm not entirely sure what the maximum rewind duration is, but it's at least a minute of gameplay from what I've tried. These suspend points remain even when you power off the console completely, so kudos to Nintendo for adding this extra quality of life feature to the SNES Classic Mini. And that's pretty much what you get as standard from the SNES Classic Mini. Nintendo have done a marvellous job recreating an authentic retro gaming experience, and minus the physical act of inserting a game cartridge, everything else is present from a hardware point of view. The selection of pre-installed games are a nice introduction to some of the best that Nintendo has to offer, but in my opinion, some great games have been omitted, such as Chrono Trigger, NBA Jam, Super Smash TV, and even any of the Bomberman games. Fortunately, there is a workaround. There's an unofficial way to add more games to the SNES Classic Mini. All you need is a PC and software called Hackchi 2. Using this software, you can soft mod your Classic Mini and load up ROMs of your favourite SNES games, and even add other console emulators and games too, if that tickles your fancy. I'm not going to detail how you do that exactly, as there are plenty of tutorial videos that will walk you through the process better than I could, but it's very straightforward, and assuming you have all the software and games already downloaded, it takes about 5 minutes to do. In my opinion, the ability to mod the SNES Classic Mini to add additional games is what makes it go from a decent retro console to a near perfect reproduction of one of the most defining gaming consoles in history. Now back to that giveaway I mentioned. How do you participate? Firstly, be an active subscriber to this channel, which I will verify if you are randomly selected. And secondly, leave a comment down below about your favourite video game from the 16-bit era. One winner will be selected at random, at which point I'll contact you with further details. With that out of the way, here are my final thoughts. When the SNES Classic Mini was announced and released back in 2017, it was a massive hit due to the faithful reproduction of an industry-defining console, offering an authentic yet modernised experience of the golden era of 16-bit video games. Of course, the Nintendo Switch has since released a library of classic games via its online subscription service, along with wireless classic controllers, which can be bought direct from Nintendo. And yes, that has the added benefit of doubling as a portable handheld console too, so you can play these classics virtually anywhere in the world. But from a collector's standpoint, there's something special about owning this miniaturized take on a classic console. So, how does the SNES Classic Mini hold up in 2022? If you're willing to mod it with additional games, very well. Even if you settle for the vanilla experience, it's a great retro device, but I wouldn't pay more than MSRP for one. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Whether you're interested in the giveaway or not, feel free to leave a comment about the SNES Classic Mini, or honestly anything retro gaming related. If you liked my content, I'd also appreciate you hitting that thumbs up button, and if you want to see more content from me, maybe consider subscribing too. As always, be well, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.